Okay, Success Nation, this is your host, Michael Nguyen from Asiansuccess magazine, where successful entrepreneurs show you how to build a company and achieve success. Let's get started. I'm simply so thrilled to introduce my guest today, Tammy Nguyen Lee. She's a producer, filmmaker, actor. She's also the president and founder of Against the Grain, a nonprofit organization promoting Asian American cultural awareness through compelling media projects. And she also produced and directed the award-winning documentary, The Operation Baby Lift, The Lost Children of Vietnam, an independent passion project that took her nearly 5 years to produce and won the Audience Choice Award at 2009 Vietnamese International Film Festival and the Philadelphia Asian Film Festival. Tammy, are you prepared to inspire?
Absolutely.
Okay, I've just given our listener just an overview about you. So take a minute and tell us about you personally because we want to get to know you and then give us an overview about your business.
Well, I am similar to many one and a half generation refugees that came to this country. I fled with my mom as a byproduct of the war and ended up here when I was very young. And so, philanthropy and giving back to the community is something that's always been ingrained in my upbringing. And my parents were always very hardworking. So, me learning to be an entrepreneur in spirit wasn't necessarily spelled out, but it was something that always was taught how to land on your feet, how to be resourceful, how to be creative. And I think that's the foundation of who I am and how I was able to create my film and how I was able to get into this industry and also how I ended up creating my nonprofit.
Thank you for that. At Asian Success Show, I start a show with the with your favorite success quote, and it's a way of getting the motivational ball rolling. So tell me, what is your favorite success quote, and how do you apply it to your everyday mentality?
My favorite success quote is from Richard Bach, his book Illusions. And it's a very special one because it's not one that just tells you something. It's very important in how you apply your life. And the first one is argue for your limitations, and sure enough, they're yours. And I want you to really think about what that means, is because we so often tell ourselves we cannot do certain things, and we've already put yourself in a box. And the next one is you are never given a wish without also being given the power to make it come true. You may have to work for it, however, because in my industry, I'm always telling people to dream, and I don't want people to dream foolishly because you have to work. The only thing you always have to remember is you still have to work for
It's
it.
awesome. Can you give us an example how you apply this quote to your everyday life?
Well, in my nonprofit or as a filmmaker, we're kind of called to be visionaries, be leaders through our imagination, and that requires dreaming and thinking outside the box, and that's what ATG Against the Grain is all about. And being a film producer is all about. You're always trying to find worlds that people want to see, but you can't get there without having a plan and working hard and being diligent every day and being resourceful and finding people, because it doesn't just fall out of the sky. Dreams are there for you to imagine, but you have to find a plan and people to help you get there.
Okay, let's turn back the clock a little bit. You have a very interesting background. I guess majority of people that I interview, so-called boat people, they pursue career in medical, in engineering, but you carve your own way, your own path to art. Can you share with the audience what led you to that path?
This is a funny story because this is not something that was encouraged through my culture, through my family upbringing. But ironically, my father is very artistic, and he had always shown me that part of himself, but never got a chance to pursue it because he had to support a family. My mom also grew up very artistic, but because of the circumstance of their life, they were pushed into an arena. They had to support a family, so they had to make different choices. And they wanted me to make safer choices too, knowing that I would one day want to have a family and need to support them. So when I told them that I wanted to be an actor at the time and a filmmaker, they just about died. And for being a Vietnamese female filmmaker, I think that was so hard for them to accept, even to this day, until I was able to find a level of success and for them to see what I can do with that and how I can affect people. Because it's not conventional. You couldn't see people do it. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to do it. Growing up, I wanted to find people who could inspire me, and I didn't see that on TV. When I was 10, I'd watch TV and I wouldn't find Asian American actors or role models. I would find stereotypes. And then as I got into theater and acting, I got pigeonholed into roles that were very stereotypical. And I wanted to break what that meant to be Asian American, to be able to show people that we are so much more. And the only way to do that was to take the reins and become a filmmaker, not just become an actor anymore, but the control was in the hands of the director and then the producer and the writer. So that's when I really decided the only way I could affect change was take control of my life so that I would give myself an opportunity and others opportunities
So
as
based
well.
on what you're saying, I can see that you have two choices. Choice number one, become an actress, where you have to take the role whoever assigned to you. Choice number two, become a director.
And both are great, but just to be in the creative field was, again, a very difficult choice. My mom would probably still tell you she wants me to go to law school. And that would be fine. And I even applied for law school and got into law school the very same day I got into the UCLA producers program. Literally within 5 minutes of each other, I got the call. And I made the call that I was going to accept LA because I knew that that was my dream. And if I didn't pursue it, I would have a huge amount of regret. And I haven't looked back ever since.
I saw from some other interview that you said that by the age of 22, when you learn more of the baby lift operation, can you help the audience understand more about the development of your curiosity and how it grew into one of the biggest project of your life?
It was probably by happenstance. I was directing a play for the Vietnamese Community Center, just graduated from SMU, and my entire life being, again, a boat person, I heard stories of the war that were always very sad. And if I heard anything at all, it was kind of bits and pieces. As you can imagine, we didn't get the full picture. It wasn't taught to us in history books. And if it was always from the American side of it. We didn't hear, the flip side. And Operation Baby Lift itself was never taught to me. And it wasn't until I heard about it from an American nurse who had served in the war and been a part of this that I uncovered something about my own cultural history that I knew nothing about. And that sparked huge curiosity because, again, it was an untold story. And at the time, it seemed like one that had happiness involved. Two sides coming together, united out of the desire to help these innocent children. And I thought that was so universal and compelling. So that story stayed with me until I graduated from UCLA and I got a small grant to start the research. And of course, it took 5 years, as passion projects do, where you're not getting paid. But I learned so much along the way about the adoptees, about the volunteers, about what really happened, and about how it was very relevant to what was going on in modern history and what was going on today.
So when you were doing the project, and apparently there's so many sources, so many data points, and so many points that you can go and get more information, how do you know that you were on the right path?
Documentaries are very organic in process, and you might start out with one thesis statement of what you think is going to happen, but it doesn't come into play until the end. And even then, the story can change because it's real life. A documentary is not a movie that you script. It is something that is unfolding all the time. And back then, I was producing this when Facebook wasn't big. So even connecting with the right adoptee community was very difficult. And it took, almost metaphorically knocking on doors to gain the trust of one adoptee that would lead me to another adoptee and so on and so forth. And slowly this onion of a story unraveled. And if you've seen the movie, even then, the story changed over the course of 5 years. One of the adoptees we interviewed was on the path to adopting a son, and we thought it would end with this great big gotcha moment where we would follow him to Vietnam and he would get his son. And at the end of the story, at the time, it ended with, we didn't know. And that's reality. And I couldn't tie it all up in a huge red bow and present it to the audience. But that's what happened. And we wanted to really show the truth of the situation of international adoption, how challenging it can be, and in the light of history, that we could go back and trace through different people telling us their story, presenting it as honestly as we could and without bias. That was incredibly important to me, to not insert myself into the story and to let people tell it in their own words. But again, the story of each person changed and evolved.
The biggest project of your life didn't come easy, right?
No, nothing good ever does.
Share with the audience some of the challenges when you work with this project and how you overcome.
Well, a documentary and being an independent documentary filmmaker, financing is probably one of the biggest. And so, I got a very small grant to start this from UCLA. So I was very fortunate to have that. But I quickly ran out of those funds because travel was so extensive to be able to crisscross the country. And, we didn't have things like Skype to be able to just do interviews. We had to go face to face. And so we got resourceful. My husband was very supportive, and we used miles. We used Priceline and Hotwire, and, borrowed and bartered financially to make it happen. We would go on vacations planning where an adoptee might be so we could go and interview them or volunteer. And over the course of, those 5 years, the stories came together. We got, our equipment was a gift. One of them was a GL1 that my mom gave me when I graduated. We bought another one, and the equipment, we got from eBay. So again, it was never with the idea that we couldn't do it. We just found a way to do it. I will always tell people, don't take no for an answer. If you really believe in your dream, just find another way to make it happen. And you just have to get really creative.
How does this documentary film change your identity?
Well, I was working full time, and I think that's why it took so long, because I could only do it, in my spare time. But it's very intuitive for you to ask about how it affected me personally, because even though I am a boat person and this is not my story, and I often get that question as if I am an adoptee, but I'm not, I identified very much with the struggle that they go through, because here they are, a group of young Vietnamese Americans put into not their birth country and raised in a culture that is not their own. And as for any immigrant population, finding that struggle for identity and feeling of belonging is very universal. And them being, in their early 20s and hearing what their struggle was like to understand who they were, what their history was, I find that very relatable. And in many ways, I found an extra family through them. I call many of them my friends. And one of them ended up helping me found ATG, Jared Rayberg, who's a very good friend of mine now. And it gave me a sense of peace in knowing that I had another community that I could identify with, and vice versa. And we've created a kinship because I allowed them to tell their story, which many of them had never been able to tell it in their own story. Because documentaries had been done about baby lift before, but never from the mouths of the adoptees themselves. It was always kind of told as if they were babies, never as adults that had feelings and opinions on how all of this came to be and how that affected their lives. And so it was cathartic for all of us.
So upon completion, the completion of your project, how does it change your belief about life, about things? Because previously you think that you cannot make it because there's so many challenges, so many difficulties, and about finance and things like that. But finally you made it. How did that change your life? I mean, that's
it's one of those things they call lightning in a bottle. Everything came together at the right time, the right place. I was in the right part of my life. I was in my, early 20s to late 20s. And it was the right time in my career where I could do that. I had I don't know that I could do that now. It's one of those things when you run a marathon and you look back and you go, how did I do that? And you just, the sheer will to make it happen, the will, the passion. I look back and I sometimes think that was another person because I live a different life today. I'm a mom to 2 girls. I run a nonprofit, and I have a crazy day. And it's not just about me anymore and my project. It's about people. about family, and about my board. And the community is so much bigger than just me and my artistic vision. So in many ways, I look back and I'm so proud that I was able to be part of that. And I don't know that I will get a chance to do anything like that ever again.
So what did you learn about making this project, and how does that experience prepare you for the next project, which is Against the Grain?
Um, Again, I just learned that passion can really give you so much extra drive that you had never imagined. You just have to believe sometimes that you can do it, because there were so many different bumps in the road, from finances to scheduling to, again, finding people who could volunteer to help. It was all done pro bono. And the fact that we were able to convince people to believe in the dream and help, um, it kind of restored my faith in humanity in a lot of ways. So I think that's probably the biggest thing I learned, is like, people can be really wonderful if you get them to believe in your cause. And that's how I was able to start ATG.
So right now, based on what you know, if you had to look back, what would you have done differently to make this film better?
Well, if you look at the film, I mean, it's probably every student filmmaker's biggest mistake. I made every mistake in the book. Um, I didn't have a professional crew. It was me and my husband, and I taught him how to tape at some point, and then we realized that didn't work so well, so let's switch off. But we did what we could to get the story, and it's not the highest production value, but I know it's real. So yeah, if I could have gone back and had more money, then there's always things that you can change and always make better. You can always shoot for longer. You could shoot for 10 years, but the story would have been different. And I think I'm happy with how it turned out. I would love to be able to have like more resources to get it further into the world, so that people can see it, into the hands of educators, so they can show it in schools. And everything that I'm not happy with, or wish or think that there is room for improvement, we're still working on. So that's where I'm always trying for more. I never just am satisfied to be where it's at. And so I think we're still getting there.
What is your proudest moment when you were making this film?
Um, well, the obvious answer is when we were at Vietnamese International Film Festival and we won Audience Choice Award. But I didn't know that until we flew back home to Dallas. So my really proudest moment was just presenting it at the Vietnamese International Film Festival. That was our world premiere. And we had several of the cast members come out, and the audience was packed. And the response was completely overwhelming. And the Q&A afterwards told me that they got it. And I think for any filmmaker and for any person, just like, this question in the film was, you just want people to understand you. You want to be validated. And I think Vietnamese International Film Festival validated all of us.
Okay, let's talk about Against the Grain a little bit. Can you help the audience reintroduce Against the Grain, about its growth, about its accomplishment?
Well, Against the Grain was born actually out of producing the film. So on one of the trips back to Vietnam, we interviewed a couple of the adoptees and volunteers from Baby Lifts. And I've been going back to Vietnam for years with my parents, but on this particular trip, we made a concerted effort to visit several of the orphanages. And maybe it was that trip, and maybe it was from producing the film, that it was so much more significant to me, seeing and hearing from the adoptees who had been orphans, at that time over 30 years ago, and seeing it still happen in my birth country at that time. It struck me that someone needed to do something about it. And we'd been going back for years with our own funds and funds we collect from friends. And I felt like as a family, we could do so much more. And so when we came home, with my family and a couple of dear friends, we started a 501c3 to legally fundraise for these orphanages in Vietnam. And so that's how ATG was born, was part production company to house films like Baby Lift, and part to raise money for orphanages in Vietnam. And since then, we've really exploded to do so many other things. We have scholarships for young Asian American artists and leaders. We have events like Fashion for a Passion and Cocktails for a Cause, where we promote emerging artists and bring the community together to dialogue about, what does it mean to be Asian American. And so, ATG started as one thing, and it's just grown like a child. It's just grown and created its own personality and affected so many people. And I'm very, very proud of ATG for that reason.
How much has been donated to help orphanages?
I mean, over the years, I think we talked about it at Fashion for Passion last year. We've raised over the last 6 or 7 years almost $100,000 total, and how we distribute it is more than half of that has gone towards orphanages, and the other half has gone towards scholarships and outreach programs. So, that sounds like the ballpark of, it must be between 40 to 50. But every year we get bigger and bigger. And like this year alone, we're going to give $22,000 to orphanages. And it's going to be mostly Vietnam, and we're expanding to the Philippines.
So you're saying that your trip to Vietnam created the aha moment for the birth of ATG, right?
Maybe it was probably there, and it might have been an aha moment in the shower where I came up with the name. But I think it had been stewing for a while, and I think that was probably the biggest stimulus to say we have to do something.
How did you raise the first $1,000 in the first year of ATG?
Again, we were creative. We didn't have a group, so it was mostly word of mouth. And then when we had the film, I did a rough cut of the film and showed it at our very first Cocktails for a Cause. And it was, very small event. It was probably like 150 people with some cocktails for a cause. We had a showing of the rough cut, and, people were asked to donate to it if they believed in it. And they did. And we were fortunate from that. Word of mouth spread, and we started doing a lot of social campaigns, social media campaigns. People could donate by PayPal, send in checks. And
what are some of the challenges happening in your first year?
When the first year, I was still working full time as a producer. So I was balancing, a very hectic schedule, plus trying to do this, plus creating a brand. What ATG even was. People didn't even understand what our name meant. They actually thought we were against rice, and it had nothing to do with that. So again, it was like, when you create an idea and making it solidify, and getting your team to understand what it was and spreading the message. I think that was part of it. The sheer technical aspect of producing, cutting, and finishing the film, getting it out to festivals, getting it distributed, turning it into a DVD. There were so many different components, from not just the nonprofit, but then the media production and post-production elements.
On the first year, you made a small sample of your movie and show it to the public, and that's how you raise the fund and get it going.
And nowadays they have Kickstarter where they can do samples, and there's so many other ways that you can fundraise now that are planned. And I wish I had these things then. In some ways it makes it easier for people, but in some ways it's much more competitive because now everyone's doing it.
How do you grow from that first 1,000 to 10 times? What are some other things that you did?
From that, we very quickly released the film. And so when you have a finished product that people can see and believe in and understand, that's when the money comes in. And, we created a PSA. When we would go back, my mom and her friends on the ground that were our volunteers would bring back pictures and show what was really being done. And so I think when people can see it, understand it, hear it, taste it, smell it, all those things, is when they really get moved to do something. And then when we have our own volunteers mobilized to show people through events, that's when we can get more people recruited to get it. Because again, so many people are asking for your money. And the idea of charity and philanthropy is maybe not something that's taught to us in the Asian community as much, because as immigrants, we are taught to kind of worry about ourselves right now first, our career and our family. And giving to others is not high on the list of priorities until you're okay yourself. So me knocking on doors asking for money is a very hard thing to do. And when people are giving, I think they are giving based off of knowing who I am, knowing my credibility, knowing what our track record is, and believing in what we do.
What was the idea that leading up to the first Fashion for a Passion project?
My husband tells a story that I told him hey, how about we just have a fashion show? And I don't remember it being, I guess, whimsical as that, but I really thought, what is the best way to get people in so that we can attract people and show off our talented community and get them in so that we can engage them with what our message is. Because I know our generation is very specific in how you appeal to them. You can't do this, feed the children sappy advertising. They'll instantly turn away. But if you look around, people love fashion. They love events where people can come together and they love to party. So I had to think about like creatively what is going to get the most people in the doors and then do a twist on it. Everything had to do with a cause. And I think people feel good about spending their money when they know it's going to a good place.
So for the first project, I mean, for the first year that the Fashion for Passion was going on, how did it go?
Yeah, it's funny looking back because this year will be our 6th year, and last year was a milestone year. And we looked back and we couldn't believe that we had accomplished so much with this branded event. Our first year, we were very lucky, and we had probably only 4 designers and then 1 boutique that sold clothes. And it was at a very cool venue. We kind of got the right elements in place. Cool venue, great talent, music, food. So with those in mind, that's what we've continued over and over and over. It's a good formula. And that very first year, the biggest success story that came out of that was us teaming up with Tammy Nguyen, who was at the time just a new graduate of UNT. And if you know who she is now, she has exploded. Nyakan is her brand, and she's in Saks, and she's in Neiman Marcus, and she's, dressing Hollywood celebrities. And we love that we've been able to give her and others a platform where they can gain success in a career in the community because it's about launching people. We've then promoted artists, musicians, and it's a forum for artists to come together and feel like they have a community and be supported. And it's for us a way to showcase to the greater Asian and non-Asian community what amazing things are coming out of who we are. I don't think we had events like this before. Maybe Paris by Night, but again, it was it was all kind of targeted towards one audience, and this was supposed to be for everyone.
So from that event, with the success of Nyakan, and how does it grow from last year when you first started?
That first year, we probably raised $5,000. $5,000, and again, it was our first year. Not a lot of people knew about it, but it was still a pretty big audience. I think it was like over 200 people or almost 200 people. And then now we've doubled the numbers. We've raised almost $35,000, and we've continued to gain huge sponsors. And we have room to grow. We'd like to get a lot more corporate sponsors, and make it easier on ourselves so that we're not reinventing the wheel every year. But yeah, we've grown so much. We've picked up people who hadn't no knowledge or awareness of who we were and what the Asian community could offer. And I think what we're doing that's important is the positive promotion and representation of the Asian American community, not just for ourselves so that people can be inspired, but that other people can see what the Asian American community is capable of doing.
What is your vision for ATG in the future? Right now, it's a place for Asian American showcase their work, showcase their artistic project.
My dream, and that's always good to start from there. And again, you have to build your plan to get there. But I would love to be able to truly make it a hybrid production company and a nonprofit. To date, we've only done Operation Baby Lift, but the idea was to be able to create more important social issue documentaries that we could share. And it requires a lot of funding for that to happen. So my dream would be for us to grow so that we can create more content that can engage with people, that can shed light on stories that are so important in our community. And of course, to be able to continue the important work we do with the orphanages. We're only scratching the surface with helping basic needs right now, because that's what we can do. If we had a more extensive volunteer network on the ground, I would love to be able to help build schools, be more in depth with the kind of aid that we can give them. And then with the scholarships, we're, helping a small population of students now. I want to be able to give more And all of that takes funds.
When you said that you want ATG become a hybrid between nonprofit and production, how did the production arm come into help?
Right. I mean, it almost would be like creating um, could be like an online TV network where we're producing media that is getting out to people. And I don't know that anyone's really doing that because there are film festivals that are, collectors of content and they show them in theaters. And then there are the conventional nonprofits. But I don't see anything that's both right now, creating, giving, and getting at the same time. And so that's what I mean about hybrid is production companies usually exist as for profit, but not usually nonprofit, and functioning as a true nonprofit, creating events, raising money, all of this stuff. We do so much.
The
in
first
one.
year of managing the ATG, what was holding you back?
The first year for me is never. It's never the first year. The first year is always you're driven by passion and you're ready to go and you're fired up and you've got that hunger in your belly. It's usually like now when you're tired and you can always find excuses to do other things. And my board always asks me, how do you manage to do this? And I always tell them, it's not easy because I have two little girls. They're, under the age of 3. And I'm a wife. I do have an active social life. I have a lot of things going on. And so managing ATG is a full-time job. And it requires a lot of passion and commitment on my part. And because it's like my baby, I can't give it up. But the hardest part is, you have to teach people and get people to believe as much as you do. And they're not always on the same page. They have their different priorities. They have their lives. And it's a volunteer organization. It is not a for-profit. Because as you know, as entrepreneurs, when you hire people, you are paying them to do a job. With volunteers, you are enlisting their help. So whether they do their job 10% or 100%, you have to be grateful. So accountability is a very hard issue to deal with. And I think that's one of the most difficult things in the nonprofit world.
You have a great team that's been with you, for 2 or 3 years, right?
We have many that have been on since the very beginning, and they've changed their roles as time has allowed, but many of them have been on since the very beginning. And I'm very, lucky to have that. We've become like our own little family.
What sort of techniques or things or team management that you can share with the audience, how to run your organization?
I often get that question about, what is leadership? And for me, what I can offer to my board is, my vision. And I think oftentimes a leader is called upon because they have a unique vision that people believe in and a dream that people, want to be a part of. And I'm very organized too. I try to be organized and see in people what their unique talent is and how they can contribute to the team. So I'm like a human resource manager in some ways, where I'm tapping the right person for the right job because I want them to grow. It's not just about what can you do for ATG, but what can ATG do for you and how can you grow from this experience. So I think that's why people stay, is because they love seeing what ATG can do for the world and that they're getting something personally out of it, whether it's relationships with other board members or, work experience that, relates back to what they want to grow into, practice, and just, I think that's what it is. I think it's they believe in what I believe in, and I think that's why we've been able to stick it out, because it's not easy what we do. It's not easy putting on these glamorous events. It takes so much time and lots of behind the scenes hours and work, and we're not getting paid. We joke that we get paid in hugs and smiles.
Here you go. That's another way that you reframe it, right? What is the best advice that you ever received?
For me personally, I have often been told, you need to believe in yourself. And when you're a pioneer in anything, when you're a groundbreaker, and you don't see someone who's forged that path ahead of you to know if there will be success or not, it's very easy to lose confidence and to be afraid. So anytime anyone tells me, just believe in yourself, don't be scared and be brave, I think oftentimes it gives you that little extra nudge, because it's too easy to say, I can't do it. I'm too tired. I don't have the time. But when anyone encourages you and says what you're doing is important and you have to do it, and be strong and believe in yourself, I think those are important words to tell anyone.
Apparently, since you have those success in the past, that hey, I made the biggest project of my life and running ATG. So how do you apply that advice in your everyday life?
It's a daily mantra. I have to tell you that, because every day I'm putting out some fire. You know, when you're planning an event, you know, from the smallest detail, I'm very detail oriented, down to the vision, the big picture, to the smallest little detail. A lot can happen, and so every day when something goes wrong, or you know, something gets dropped in your lap, or a fire happens and you have to put it out, and it happens over and over, you have to be able to take a step back, a breath, and say, it's for a greater cause. That's the only way you can get through it. Because otherwise you'll say, you know what, I just can't do this. This is not worth it. I have other things. I have kids. I have, you know, X, Y, and Z. But for me, I'm a very cause-minded person. I have to remind myself that there's a bigger picture here and that I'm helping people in the end. And that's a huge payoff for all the work.
Can you share with the audience one of your personal habits that you believe contribute to your success?
Wow, I'm organized. I mean, in many ways, I'm very, very organized. I write lists down all the time. So I have a calendar, and I have my phone on a calendar, and then I have a dry erase board, 4 of them in my kitchen that I constantly am writing notes on, and I'm always crossing off checklists. And then on our team, we have several project management tools that we use to keep track of each other. So I'm an over communicator. You could probably call me an over communicator, always checking in and making sure. And I just, you know, I make lists, I check back, I follow through, I try to do all those things that maybe time doesn't allow people to think about. You know, they can get disorganized in their thoughts, or they forget because they didn't write something down, or, you know, those are the things that I try to really stay on top of. And it's hard because when you're a mom, you have 10,000 things you're doing.
One of the things that I admire you the most is that your ability to do storytelling. And I watched your TED as SMU. It was amazing. And can you share with the audience some of the ways or the techniques that they can get started?
I think it's part of my training, actually. You know, being in theater, I was exposed to so many different types of stories, and I loved to read from the time I was little. So English was always something really important to me, English literature. And reading a lot gives you the rhythm. And then when I was in producer's program and in film school, they teach you story structure. And it's very basic. You know, whether it's a 3-act structure, whether it's a 5-act structure, there's a clear beginning, a middle, and an end. And if you mix it all up, there should be a reason for it. But storytelling has ground rules, and it has a format, and you just have to learn that. And the more you start to hear stories and read stories, the more you'll start to see similarities, and then you start your own story from that. And another thing about storytelling is just people want to hear stories because they want to engage. You know, they want to find themselves in the story. And to be a good storyteller, I feel sometimes you have to listen. You have to understand human psychology. You have to be able to get people into your story, right? So if I'm telling it to you softly, or if I get really loud or whatever, it's, you know, because I know what I would react to on the flip side. So I think that's, again, it's like being very intuitive about human nature.
I'd just love you to share with the audience what are some of the internet resources or tools that you're in love with and you want to share it again?
Well, I have a MacBook Pro. I've been an Apple user for many years. Apple revolutionized things for the creative people because it's all very organic and intuitive thinking technology. I love my iPhone. I could not live without it. And because of the way in which we do things with our nonprofit, Facebook is so critical to what we do, social media, because we don't have a lot of funds. So we have to use the least expensive way to get our message across the most amount of people. Facebook, social media, Instagram. Now we're moving into Vimeo and YouTube as we create content and posting that. We have Groundbreaker Speak, where we now tape each panelist's presentation and put it on to the web so that others who cannot attend can still get those nuggets of advice from them. So anything that I can share our stories with, I'm happy to kind of use. So now there's Vine. I haven't started that yet, but I love the idea of getting a short amount of time to tell a really good story, because that's
Can you
super
make
hard.
it 10 seconds?
I don't know. But I like the challenge of it.
Tell me about the story of the event in the next 2 weeks, the groundbreaking event. How did you come up with the event?
It was kind of a solution to an issue that had been going on, because people started thinking of ATG as this organization that was a fashion organization. Can you believe it? Because Fashion for a Passion started doing so well, they thought, oh, well, are you like fashionistas? Or, they just thought that that's all we did. And so it was kind of a solution for me to figure out, how can we help them understand what all else we do? Because we did Cocktails for a Cause every now and then, and we did Fashion for a Passion, which reached so many people that, again, we started getting branded as that group. And so I felt what was missing, that other organizations did very well, was inspire leadership. And that was a huge component of what we're meant to do with artists is, as we create artists, they are going to be leaders in their field, Tammy Nguyen being one of them. And again, for me, I didn't see that leadership in entertainment when I was growing up. And I feel like those people are groundbreakers. So I wanted to be able to share those stories. Selfishly, I wanted to hear them. And I wanted to be able to share them to inspire other people, to let them know, this is how you can do it. This is how they did it. And the diversity was a given. We just wanted to make it most accessible to the most amount of people. And NAP, obviously, and other groups had panels before, but it was mostly on the corporate side and more conventional occupations, like being a lawyer, being a doctor, how you get into that business. But there was not one about how you become a writer, how you become an actor, how you become a journalist. All in one was fascinating. And to get those people in one room is so interesting. And this year we have an all-female panel, and that's very cool.
If you could recommend one book to our listeners, Tammy, what would it be?
The book Illusions was something that was introduced to me in my senior year of high school, and that was groundbreaking to me. It was, again, it introduced me to my mantra, and it just changed the way I thought about my capabilities. And I think, I'm not really big on like self-help books, but for some reason this book really spoke to me in a metaphorical way. It was great storytelling. It's short, so people don't have to, really have a huge time investment. But it changed my life, and it changed my perspective on things. And I think that's one of the books that I would really recommend.
That's awesome. So Success Nation, if you haven't already, you can get the audio version of Illusion or any book you want for free by going to asiansuccessbook.com. Tammy, this next question is a little bit doozy. Imagine you woke up tomorrow morning in a brand new world, identical to Earth. You have all the skills, you have all the skill and experiences that you have. Your food and shelters are taken care of, but all you have is your MacBook and $500. What would you do in the next 7 days?
This is such a hard question, because for me, I don't think I could exist without my family. So I would quickly start probably just typing my memoir. Because if I cannot duplicate my family and find my family, I don't know how I could live.
How do you want to be remembered?
Now that I have kids, I really think about that question a lot. My legacy. And if I died tomorrow, I would want my kids to remember me as someone who tried her best to make a better world for them. To know that I was never someone who gave up when it got hard, and that I always wanted to do everything I could to give them a better model for who they could be. and to be able to inspire others, because in this world it's just so easy to think about yourself and your life and where you're going, just you. And not that I'm telling people to sell their homes and sell the materials, but I do think that the idea of thinking of the world outside of yourself is so important, because it changes your relationship to everything and everybody. And I think it does make you a better person.
I truly enjoy listening to your journeys and all story you share. And so give Success Nation one parting piece of guidance and share the best way that we can find you, and then we say goodbye.
Sure. I think for everyone listening, I think we all have a dream inside of us. We all have a little child. We were all born and we became children, and we all had a dream at some point. And maybe that was nurtured in you or maybe it wasn't, but I encourage all of you to always look back and figure out, what was your 10-year-old self's dream? Why did you change it? Why wouldn't you pursue it? Because even if you're doing what you're doing now, are you happy doing it? And if you're not, why aren't you doing what you're happy doing? Why aren't you doing it to be happy? And so I would ask everyone to really think about that question, because passion is the thing that makes life the best. And if you're not happy doing whatever you're doing, then is it worth it? You only get one life.
Tell me, what is the best way that the audience can find you and get to know your work?
Absolutely. Please visit us at againstthegrainproductions.com. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Vimeo, YouTube. And you can also find the film at thebabylift.com.
Tammy, thank you so much for being generous with your time, your expertise, your story, your experience. Success Nation will salute you, and I guess I'll catch you on the other side.